Hi, my name is Summer Pila, teacher at Waimea Elementary School on the Big Island. Um, yeah, so I continue to teach special education preschool. Um, I just really love um, getting in the young kiddos, whether they're coming in on their third birthday or, you know, or closer to 4 and 5. But I love just kind of being their very first teacher, kind of creating that nurturing environment for them, and also just being able to like create those relationships with the parents and kind of giving them any guidance I can. I didn't start out teaching special education as a special ed parent, but I've become one. So I feel like I kind of can sympathize and with the parents and kind of give them any guidance in that way. But yeah, I just love special education preschool.
Hi, my name is Natalia Sandoval. I teach at Waikiki Elementary School. And I continue to teach special education preschool just because I love my kiddos. They're really fun. And also, I have two teenage boys and I don't plan on having any more kids. So for me, my kids are my babies. It's my favorite age, that 3, 4, 5-year-old age. The kids are so inquisitive, they're so curious. They have so much development and growth during that window. And so it's really fun to be part of that process.
Hi, I'm Liz Light. I've been teaching preschool special education for 5 years, and oh my gosh, it's hard to pick just one reason why to stay in special ed preschool. It's just because preschool is the best. I think it doesn't get much better. Like Natalia said, they're cute, they're fun, and it is really amazing just how much development you get to see, especially if they come to you right when they turn 3, especially if it's at the beginning of a school year. You might have the same child for 3 years just teaching preschool. So you just get to see them come so far. And it really is just amazing to get to work with the same kids for so long. And you just get a really deep bond with them and with their family, because I like that you get to work more closely with families with preschool than you might in some other grade levels.
Hi, I'm Kelsey Komoto. I teach at Hickam Elementary, and why I stay in preschool special education is kind of like what everyone else has said. It's just fun. You get to be creative in how you teach, and the kids are just sponges. They soak up everything you say, everything you do. And it's just fun to have those kind of in-depth conversations and help them to learn about different topics. Again, most of them, it's their first school setting, so you're teaching them for the very first time how to be at a table, how to walk in a line, about different topics. Like my classroom, we're learning about fruits, and I have to describe what a mango is. And so it's just really fun, and you never know what the day is going to bring you.
So share your most memorable moment as a preschool special education teacher.
I'll go ahead. I think, and it's also kind of just happens every year as I hold like a preschool graduation, like kind of had this little poem and I put together like a slideshow of like the whole year, that we spent together of pictures and videos. I mean, and it's just like my EA and I, like, you would think like we're the parents, like it's so emotional, like it's emotional because like, we were talking about we can get them when they're 3. Like I've had one, I was looking at his eligibility date was 2018. I'm like, oh my gosh, we've had you for so long, and then you're getting ready to go to kindergarten. It's memorable, and it's just like emotional, like just the bond you create with that student. But so yeah, that kind of happens to me every year as I get ready to send them up to kindergarten. I'm like an emotional mess as I'm trying to call out their names in graduation.
I think for us, it's hard to think of one memorable moment. I think every day is a memorable moment because it's so different. Kelsey shared before, we even though we're very structured, our environments, things can just happen off the cuff, and the kids say the funniest things and they do the funniest things, and just watching them make connections. And when you finally see something click and you actually see the progress and the gains in the kids, I think that's just memorable all the time. Every time that they pick up a skill that you've been working on this for weeks or months and it finally clicks, those are those moments that you celebrate with the kids and the families. And so I think, yeah, it's hard to just pinpoint one.
I agree with all of that. And like Summer, I think the graduation at the end of the year is like consistently one of my favorite things. I've actually gone so far as I bought a cap and gown for them, and I take studio graduation photos with like a gold sequin backdrop that I bought on Amazon. And it's that's probably my favorite thing every year. And honestly, we've branched out into thematic backdrops during our thematic units. Like, we're all going to take photos with a bunch of T-Rexes for our dinosaur unit pretty soon. And the same as Natalia, just working with them and seeing that click. Or I guess right now, one of the funniest things is I had a student who started with me last year who wasn't talking too much, but just the other day as she was leaving, she turns around and goes, "Bye, honey, have a good day," as she's leaving. And it was just the sweetest thing. We're just like, where, what? Okay, cool. Love it so much. Every day there's something memorable.
I totally agree. It's hard to pick one. There's so many throughout all the years, But I think my favorite moments are when the kids are just genuinely like nice to each other, when they're sweet, and it's like they're picking up those good habits and how to be a good friend, how they're sharing and they do it willingly and by themselves. But kind of like Liz, I'm trying to think of my most recent special moment. It was when a kid who, came with very little language, maybe one word utterances. This past week, he said, we were reading a story and it doesn't look like they're always paying attention, but he said something very appropriate. He said something like, the wagon is skating. And it's like, whoa, where did that come from? But then try not to react, but you're secretly like, yes. So I think those are the best moments.
All right, perfect. Thank you. So we'll move on to the next question. So disability categories. What types of students do you typically service in the preschool?
I can start. So typically, I think we kind of all have developmental delay, which is usually speech delays, but also kids with autism are on the autism spectrum as well. I've also serviced students who are blind. And I recently actually had 2 blind students at the same time, which is pretty rare, but I loved it. It was amazing to have them. So I would say developmental delayed, autism, and then once in a while you get blind or hearing impaired.
Right. So, and the thing that is just, and it just, I think, helps you become a better teacher is you just get different types of kids like every year. So, like for a few years, we were kind of just getting more kind of developmental delay, but more like typical kids with like a speech delay. And then this year we have a class like full of kids on the spectrum. So it's like a completely different class. But yeah, in the past I have last year and the year prior, we had a student with cerebral palsy. And then I did have a hearing impaired little girl as well. So we kind of, learning all those different sort of, tech things that we need to use for the hearing impaired. So it's good to kind of just build our repertoire of things to learn about these kiddos.
All right, so we'll move on to the next one. So daily schedule. So what does like your daily schedule look like? A day in the life of a preschool special education teacher.
Chaos, utter chaos. No. I think we all probably do some type of circle time, some type of arts and crafts, lots of play centers, recess, PE, tantrums here and there. So lots of crying and diaper changing and feeding and cleaning, lots and lots of cleaning and tissue and sanitizer. So yeah, it's full. You never get to sit down. Um, or when you do, it's in like the tiniest of chairs. So but yeah, I think it's just a typical day is tiring and lots of fun, some crying here and there, and just, it's awesome.
And you never have to worry about, if you have an Apple Watch, not getting all your move points or stand goal. Like, you're going to hit that every single day in preschool, because as soon as you sit down, something's going to happen and you're going to need to get right back up. But it's never boring, can put it that way. And a lot of music too, and be fully prepared to have all sorts of songs stuck in your head. Even when the kids go home, my EA and I sit in the classroom like baby shark doo doo doo, or whatever our song of the month is. Like, it'll just be in there all weekend long.
On to the next question. Vocational skills. So what types of non-academic skills do you teach?
So it's funny because it's like, they're having us kind of break down like our goals and like how many minutes we need to work on, like, and it's like we are working on things like throughout the entire day. So it's not really hard not to have like the sped minutes be the entire day. But I feel like just being able, things other teachers take for granted, sitting, looking at the speaker, and then along with the toilet training and all those daily living, hand washing, feeding. So preschool, we have a lot of majority of is the non-academic skills, I feel like.
I also like to go along with kind of the interests of my students a little bit. So right now, some things that we are doing are, one of my students is learning how to operate a 3D printer. And and all of my students, we have taken over the aquaponics at school. So we're learning about feeding fish and how plants grow and the parts of a plant and things like that. So pretty much for us, it's kind of, it changes all the time, as we keep saying, I think, for almost every single question.
Environment. So how does a preschool classroom look different from like elementary or any other kinds of classrooms?
Well, aside from the size of our furniture, I think we probably all have a lot of toys in our rooms, a lot of art supplies, um, probably a lot of structured spaces throughout our classrooms, that are, whether it's designated for home center or the library or block center and things like that. So for me, I have tons of books, and I need tons of like storage space for all of it, just because, we constantly are changing out things for the kids based on their interests. Over the years, I feel like I'm somewhat of a trash collector or like a pack rat, because if somebody's like, oh, do you want this? I'm like, yeah, I'll use it for my kids. So I think, yeah, we have to have like a lot of things on hand, because you just never know what you'll be able to use it for in the classroom or in as part of your lesson or for learning.
And no desks, at least not in mine. So that's one way that it's always very different.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. We're probably the only grade level with no desks. I mean, we have our kind of group tables and the half moon tables to do our group work, and now we're having all our meals there too. So but yeah, like normally non-COVID year, we're like lot rugs and our center areas, kind of big, more open spaces for our centers and things like that. Yeah, lots of toys. This year I'm really missing all like soft plush kind of things that I had to pack up, and all the soft rugs and things like that. It's a little sterile this year.
Definitely a lot of visuals. I think in general with younger kids, visuals really help. But for our kids visuals everywhere, and to kind of also get them to talk more. So to label things, this is a door, this is a table, things like that.
Additional questions. So I have one for you. What would you tell someone? So when someone is thinking about becoming a special education teacher, sometimes they have to decide whether or not they want to do like preschool, like early childhood, or elementary. So what would you say to someone who's kind of like, I don't know if I want to do preschool or elementary? Like, what are some things for them to think about to help them make that decision about whether or not to go into preschool? Right? Well, like what type of person would probably gravitate more towards the preschool than the elementary setting?
I think to be preschool, you have to be firm but still loving. I think you have to be willing to work because, like we said, we don't sit down. So it's constant movement, it's very fast paced. And it's not for everyone, even with support staff. Sometimes we'll see a lot of turnover with contracted people because they're just like, whoa, I wasn't expecting, all of this. You have to be okay with the fact that you're going to change a diaper here and there. You're going to deal with vomiting, you're going to deal with crying, and you're going to have to hug a kid and console them. And, it's not all about the academics. It's about the whole child. It's very much more nurturing, I think, than once you hit the K through 5 or, upper grade levels like that, because we're really trying to just develop the kids. And as Kelsey said before, it's their first experience to learning. And it's our job to make sure that they have that love for learning, because we're basically setting the tone for them, and and how they'll enjoy school from that point on.
Yeah, I think just having extra special patience. I didn't really know I had that, but I think we kind of learned to have that, just kind of, like remembering they're 3 years old, they're babies. And just having that patience, and like Natalia said, definitely the nurturing part of it um, is so important. But yeah, like just letting people know, like, yeah, you're going to be dealing with bodily fluids, like you have to be okay with that. Like we've had EAs come in, they're like, oh, I don't do that. I'm like, oh, you're gonna have to find, like, that's not gonna work. Like it's like a requirement. So yeah, just being okay with that. And yeah, and dealing with all those kind of 3-year-old sort of typical kind of meltdowns, and with the special needs added to it. So yeah, it definitely takes a certain person, I think.
I would say too, if you like to play, because that's so much of our day is facilitating learning through play. So oftentimes you're playing with the kids, and that's how you're going to teach them concepts like colors, like, ooh, we're going to go on a color scavenger hunt or something. So you kind of have to almost like showboat a little sometimes. So, really enjoying what you're doing pays off really big too.
I also think celebrating the small victories. I think in general for special education, we celebrate the small victories, but even more so, I think in preschool, because the victory sometimes is just them just sitting down with the group. Sometimes it's like, thank you for looking at me. Thank you for, coming into the classroom. So there's a lot of that. There's a lot of appreciating the small things.
And you can't take yourself seriously. Like, you have to be willing to make yourself look like a fool for the kids, because that's what they enjoy the most, is when you're being your silliest. Because if you can laugh, they're gonna laugh and they're gonna enjoy, and they're gonna love coming to school.
Awesome. So going back to like the idea of academics. So we asked what non-academic skills you guys focus on, but what are the academic skills? Because doesn't preschool have a whole different set of standards than elementary? So what are kind of like some of the academic things that you work on?
So I kind of like to say like pre-academic even, and I think, yeah, we do have our Hawaii early learning standards, but it's like you also just kind of have to take into account like, if they're 3 or if they're 4, and kind of what is like developmentally appropriate, like, um 3-year-olds aren't really ready to be tracing their name yet. They need to still kind of work on some of the fine motor skills, but yeah, things like, for our 4-year-olds getting ready to go into kindergarten, we're working on rote counting, letter identification, number identification, letter sounds. um, we do kind of use like zoophonics, which all my kids like love, and they kind of pick up on the letter sounds with kind of patterns. It kind of varies depending on the kid and what they're capable of, but I kind of like to expose those like 4-year-olds to it all, and see what they are capable of. But yeah, name tracing, because it's like on day 1 a lot of them go like have to go sign in at kindergarten on the first day. It makes so working on name tracing and then kind of working up to writing that name independently if they're able.
I think attending skills, being able to sit and gradually increasing those for longer periods of time, because our kids do get fatigued. They're little. So, to expect them to sit for more than 15, 20, 30 minutes, at a time, that's something that you actually have to work up to and that they have to build a tolerance for. And then also, vocabulary. I think, language is such a huge thing at preschool. And so we just try to expose them to as much concepts and vocabulary and experiences, because for some of our kids, they do lack that outside experience. And, pre-COVID, we were lucky to always be able to take them to field trips so they can experience going to the zoo if that's what we're studying is zoo animals, go to the aquarium if we're studying the ocean, go eat a restaurant if we're studying community helpers, and things like that. So just, I think, a lot of exposure and building vocabulary and communication.
Okay, so some people think, because you did mention you do get to have fun, you have toys, you get to play, but have you ever heard, oh, you're a preschool teacher? That must be so easy because you get to play all day, right? So could you share just like what are the actual challenges? Is it easy, first of all? And then what are some possible challenges that do come with working with our youngest population of students?
I wouldn't say it's easy. I think a lot of it is we do play, but it's play-based learning. So, we can sit in a center with a child and work on all their IEP goals. Plus, we can talk to them about the colors, the numbers, the shapes and whatnot. But I think some of the challenges are, because they're new to school, sometimes like what Everin has said, there's tantrums. Sometimes, they get really worked up and they don't know how to communicate. And I think that's a really big piece, at least for my students in the past, where if they can't communicate what they want or need, then how are they going to show they're upset? They're going to run, they're going to grab, they might hit. So there's a lot of behaviors especially when they can't talk or communicate.
I would say 100%, Kelsey. That would be the biggest challenge, is the lack of communication from the kids. And then us having to figure out an appropriate way for them to communicate. Are they going to be oral speakers? Are they going to need an alternative device? Are we going to resort to signs? So I think we're constantly trying to provide them with a means to communicate, trying to help them regulate their emotions, because they are 3 and every feeling, is 1,000 all the time. And so, and having to keep our patience, because I think they're very so in tune with our energy and the energy of the class. And sometimes this kid sets off this kid, and then you got 5 criers at the same time who all need something different. So it's definitely not easy. I think we actually have one of the hardest jobs, definitely not duty free at any point in the day, although it should be. And so, yeah, I think it's hard. And, yeah, the communication definitely has something to do with that, or the lack of.
And we do have to take into consideration, like, a brand new 3-year-old is vastly different than a 5-year-old who's about to go to kindergarten. So we're constantly having to adapt and change what we're doing when new kids come in when they turn 3, and then you have a whole new set of needs to contend with. So pretty much, I mean, if you have a class of 6, you might have kids on 6 different levels that are 6 different ages. So it's not just easy, sit them in the classroom and they'll play and it'll be happy all day long. We're having to facilitate all sorts of learning on all sorts of different levels all day.
Yeah, that is so true. That changes the dynamic in the classroom so much. And so no other great teacher really has, unless you're working with multiple grades, but you're not working in one classroom with that kind of age range. But I think it is important to remember, and it helps so much to have an admin that kind of understands preschool somewhat. Just a child's work is play. At that age, that is what is developmentally appropriate. And just kind of, and if they're, having an admin that doesn't understand, just kind of explaining that, the DAB of, preschool. But yeah, I do think we have one of the hardest jobs. I don't think other teachers realize that. I kind of always wonder what other teachers think about, us, as preschool teachers. And but yeah, I definitely think it's one of the tougher ones.
And I think sometimes people think that what we're teaching is not so hard. Like, oh, what's so hard about the ABCs 1, 2, 3s? But we have to know how to teach ABCs 1, 2, 3s 100 different ways. Okay, so it's not just one size fits all. We have to get super creative, and we have to figure out how to teach all these concepts in so many different ways, because it has to be repetitive, but it also can't be boring, because the kids have to experience it in so many other ways for them to actually grasp those concepts. So there's a lot of prep also in preschool. We're constantly cutting, laminating, prepping, cleaning, changing out task baskets and all that stuff. So I think on that end, we do a lot of prep work as well.
So what would you tell somebody who's about to graduate and get their first preschool classroom? What advice would you give to a brand new teacher to help them get on their feet?
I would just tell them, don't be afraid to try new things. It's, we all learned things in our teaching programs, and how those things may or may not translate into reality is certainly something that everyone has to contend with. And again, there's really no way to prepare for what might be in your class. So just be flexible. Don't give up. Everyone's been there. Find some other, again, be friends with the other SPED teachers at your school. Find another preschool teacher to be friends with, and that'll totally help you through.
I would say structure is really important. So, create structure in your classroom, because that'll help eliminate some of the chaos. The kids like the predictability, and I think having those routines are super helpful for them. And it's helpful for you, especially because sometimes we're managing a lot of kids, all their schedules, because they're being pulled out, a lot of adults. So having structure and routine, and stay away from the dollar section at Target, because you'll go broke. Because it's too easy, 1 plus, 1 times 6 and times 6, and now you're spending $50 and it's no longer the dollar section. So save your money, because it's hard not to want to spoil the kids and, just give them everything all the time.
Totally, Natalia. But yeah, I would also just say, yeah, like don't get discouraged. That first year is tough. Like I remember that year. Luckily I was like hired on as a second teacher, so I did have like another teacher in place to kind of guide me, but just kind of, we were just saying how we're still like learning, on the job, like so many years in, and not to get discouraged if things aren't working out the way you thought they would, and if it wasn't just kind of this fun preschool setting. I mean, because it is stressful and it's tough, and but that's kind of the way you're going to learn and kind of build up that teacher toolbox throughout the years. So
I think for me, it's okay that you don't know the answer. I think still now I don't know all the answers. And when someone asks me a question, whether it's a parent or an admin or another teacher, and I don't know, I'll say, oh, I'm not sure, but let me go find out. And so it's about like finding your people that you can go to and ask. So it's okay that you don't know. And don't feel like you have to know everything. I think for me, when I first started, I felt like, oh, I'm supposed to know all these things and I just don't know what I'm doing. But there's people around you that will be able be there to help.
Okay, last question. This one's a little different. So because you're in preschool, you're the child's first teacher. But what about the parents? Like, their child is qualifying for special education services with you guys every single time. You are the first ones to kind of be that person who's telling them, right, that they need services. So how do you support parents in that initial stage of when their child gets qualified and starts to receive services?
So I think I mentioned that earlier, but I think it's super important. That's, a really big part of our job as preschool teachers is to support the families and to support the parents through this process, because, they do grieve, and some of them do have a hard time with accepting that their child might need extra support. And so, being able to just be a resource for them, I think being an ear for them, they don't have a lot of people that they can talk to or that might understand what they're going through. So being there to chat with them, make time for them. I think more than anything, parents appreciate that feeling of knowing that we love their child just as much as they do. And that's all they want. They want somebody to love their child. They want somebody to care about them as much as they do. And they want to know that they're safe. And so making sure that, we reassure them that this is a safe environment for your child and for you. And I'm always here to support you no matter what, is super important. And to this day, I have, a lot of good relationships with parents that have come through the preschool, and they'll still call me to, to ask for help or advice, or just to be another mom to talk to, when they don't know who to turn to.
yeah, I love that, Natalia, reassuring them that their child is safe, because I mean, a lot of parents, they're just babies. Like I look back, my kids started special ed preschool when they were 3, and I look back at those pictures, I'm like, they were just babies. So I kind of have definitely changed that point of view as a teacher when I'm dealing with parents, because I have been sitting in that seat as the parent, and it's a totally different feeling. Like at my the meetings to this day, I still get like a knot in my stomach prior to my own kids meetings, but yeah, just kind of being reassuring to them, letting them know, hey, I know this is a lot of information. IEPs are so overwhelming, like, to parents who don't understand that whole process. So, hey, if you think of anything after this, let me know. Text me, email me. I'll happy to like explain it to you. And also kind of going through and asking, hey, like, is there anything like what's been kind of tough at home? I can, target that in the IEP. I mean, we can address it at school, and I can give you some strategies to help, work on it at home, things like that. Kind of just give them, okay, like somebody's here for me. And, they think they're all alone in the beginning when they're, the whole process is so new. So kind of just, helping reassure and giving them some strategies is helpful.
One thing I always do too is I feel like from, you have the eligibility and then you have the IEP, and then there's not really so much time for them to get to know you before you're like, all right, when do you want to come to school? Like what day do you want to start? So I always try to make sure that there's some time for them to come just meet with me, see the classroom before their child starts school in an ideal world, so that you can have that more personal conversation with them rather than just throwing a 16-page document at them and being like, are we good to go? So I feel like it always helps, humanize the process and gives them something more exciting to look forward to than just, sitting through that meeting and hearing things that might be challenging for them. Just always being empathetic that all parents are going to come from a different place with that. And just, again, you're their person as much as you are their child's person in preschool. It's the whole child and the whole family, honestly, I think.
Yeah, just to echo what everyone's saying, I think almost having an open door policy, not during school, but before and after school, I can talk to a parent for half an hour to an hour sometimes, just figuring out, how they're doing, not just the child, but how the parent's doing with the transition. Sometimes that's really hard for them. And sometimes I try to comfort them by, sending them more pictures and just showing them that their child is doing well and that they're thriving, because I think having kind of a look into the classroom and seeing that their child is growing, I think that kind of helps them because they don't always see that same child at home. So having kind of an open door policy in that sense helps.
Well, thank you. That was great. Is there anything you can think of that you would just want to share?
Be a special ed teacher in preschool.